Welcome. You are listening to The Travel Winds, hosted by Pete Kotzbach. This is a weekly interview show about people who travel for work and all the ups and downs that go along with it. Here we go.
Hey, welcome to the Travel Winds podcast. Today, my guest is an expert at business travel. He's traveled as a retired football player, philanthropist, businessman, football analyst, been all around author, got a lot going on. Thanks for sharing your time with me today, Merril.
My pleasure, man. Looking
Merril
forward to
Hoge, Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 year as a Chicago Bear. Seems like a kind of a weird thing that was 20 plus years ago.
it. Well, geez. Was
Kind
it
of feel-
20? I was more long. I was almost 30.
Well, I didn't want to say that, but yeah,
28 to be exact.
a while ago.
Yeah.
You've had so much going on since then, though. I mean, the 2+ decades as a football analyst, and then going through the cancer, and now being a public speaker and author. How much traveling do you think you do now on a yearly basis?
Well, I have a place in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is right across the river from Cincinnati. So
Yeah.
Cincinnati area. Then I have a place in Pittsburgh. So I tell people I really only visit places, but I hear about 1/3 a year. In Pittsburgh, 1/3 of the year, and then the rest of it in a variety of places throughout the country.
Yeah.
So I'm like a boxer. I just stick and move. I'm never in one place longer than 3 days, it seems like. So that's kind of been my mode for almost 30 years, really. I've become accustomed to it, quite honestly.
How well do you know the Cincinnati and Pittsburgh airports? Pretty well.
like the back of my hands. Like the back of my hands. I mean, I was traveling in and out of Pittsburgh before.
Yeah.
I remember when they got the new airport. I remember our team meeting. Somebody had taken a drive from the stadium and went to the airport. And they showed this video of the signs to look for, where to park, where our gates were going to be, and all that stuff. So we had a visual before. So I've known that airport. Now they're redoing it or rebuilding one. And CVG Cincinnati's here. When I started traveling out there, they had the C concourse, which was a separate concourse that you used to travel over to, and the computer planes were out of that because this was a bigger hub.
Yeah.
And that's now obsolete. It's not even, they got rid of it. So, but they've evolved with other things and improved the airport, and it's actually a real convenient airport to get in and out of.
Yeah, LAX is my home hub, and everyone hates it, but I love it because now I know how to get in and out pretty quick. So,
well, yeah, if you go, listen, LAX. I mean, I was just there. I came in over from Hawaii. I went through there, and I'm always amazed at how small it is. For the traffic that goes in and out of there.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it is. It's kind of like LA in itself. It's jammed. every aspect of it is jammed up.
Well, now they're building the bridge, and the trains for the Olympics, which will come in
snap.
a couple more years. So it's a mess again, but whatever.
Okay.
What are you going to do, right?
Exactly right.
Where'd you fly into Hawaii?
Let's see. Where did we
Oahu,
go?
or
I can't remember where. Because I think we took we entered in Maui.
Okay.
I might have went right into Maui. Actually, I think I went right into Maui.
Yeah, I'd like
from
that.
LAX. Yeah.
You're on the road so much. How do you find ways to stay, productivity wise? You got a lot going on. Do you use your downtime to schedule and do that kind of a thing, or do you use it for shutdown time?
Well, this is how I travel. I mean, I think people, I'm around a lot of people who travel, and everybody goes, "Oh, I got to eat out every night," and I'm like, wait a minute. I go, there's grocery stores when you travel, right? You didn't leave the only grocery store in your neighborhood when you left. I mean, you land, there's our grocery stores, all right? So when I travel, I just carry my lifestyle right on the road.
Okay.
As soon as I land, I go to the grocery store, get about 90%, 80 to 90% of all the things I'm going to eat from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If I ever go out, it's usually dinners. But that allows me to eat the same way. My training, depending on if I was home, what kind of length of time. I make that a part of my trip, or maybe it's my time off, so I don't have to worry about it. And then if there's a city that I have some downtime, let's say I'm speaking the next day, and based on flights, I have to get in a day, early the day before. Well, I'll use that more than likely to try to golf somewhere
There you go.
and get that in there. So that's kind of how I structure. Sometimes it's you got friends in the area, right? And it just kind of seems like doesn't matter where I'm going to end up. I probably know somebody in the area that a friend of mine that we
For
could do
3 or 4
something.
decades of travel, I'm sure you got
Yeah,
friends
you
everywhere.
accumulate some friendships. So I do that perspective. I was just in Philly. I met with I had an event, had and golf mirroring with some friends, and then met a good friend of mine that night. And I ended up staying the night for an extra night at the Four Seasons there, which I didn't realize they built a new Four Seasons versus the Four Seasons that was in Philly.
Okay.
And that place is spectacular. If you're in Philly, you go see the Four Seasons, even if it's just to go eat.
Yeah, have a lunch there.
You check in at the top floor, the 60th floor.
That's where you check
and then you work. Yeah, and then you work your way down. All the rooms are below.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, the restaurant, and it's a main check-in and main area. The restaurants are at the top. Beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous.
That's pretty cool. I was going to ask you, eating and training while on the road, did that come from your football days, or was that kind of more, after the cancer where you had to be more careful?
Nope. I've been doing that since I was like 8 years old. I got fascinated with fitness. Really wasn't sports that drove the fitness. It was the cartoon characters. I used to see like Batman, the Hulk, Robin, all these, and I'm like, gosh, how do they get their bodies like that? I'm like, I was fascinated by that. So, this is when I was a kid. Those were, around 1973, 74, 75, 76, 77. That one universal set that had all the machines around it. Like if you had that at your school, that was big time, right? That was like, we had the greatest gym of all time. I mean, even 7th, 8th grade, I'd get a bathroom, a hall pass to go to the bathroom, but I would go down and work out. I would do a workout that I thought was a workout. I'd do it. I'd try to do it in 5 minutes, try to see how much I could bench. And, I'm like, it's military. They really didn't have a setup for a squat. So, but I got fascinated by that. As a kid, obviously that translated into sports, but it's probably been my number one passion. I've loved that aspect of a lifestyle. I've found great value in it too. It's probably saved my life 3 different times.
Yeah.
Being in great shape has paid off many times for me. And so in the process of doing that, I found more value in it. And that's why it's part of what I do. I mean, it's part of getting up. It's part of, it's like I tell people all the time, I'm the most important person in my life from 6 o'clock to 7:30 in the morning. It's all about me. And then after that, then I'm better for everybody else once I've taken care of me. And I've functioned like that. It's been productive, and I do it when I go on the road, because I talk to a lot of people on the road. That's why I said that grocery thing. People are like, God, there's nowhere to eat. I'm like, wait a minute, just go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
They look at me like oh yeah, they're like, people act like the grocery store doesn't exist when you left home.
Yeah.
You have to eat out all the time, and it's not that your grocery store. I pick up about the same things every time, so it's just about navigating through the stores and figuring the store out, because they're not all the same. But once you kind of know the areas they're in, it doesn't take you that long to get my stuff.
Just gotta stay on the outside.
The 2 or 3 days I'm going to be there. I got enough. Go to my room and try to get hotels that have a little fridge and a kitchen, and that's what I like the most when I travel. If I'm traveling like that, that's how I try to travel, in those type of hotels.
I think, how do you deal with jet lag? Because, you do the 6 to 7:30. I'm the same way, but when I go back east, all of a sudden it's like, now it's 3 in the morning to my body.
Yeah. I think that's a harder transition to come that way. When I go, depends. Let's say I go to Phoenix, because I used to live in Phoenix, used to live in Scottsdale. Nice. If I go there and visit somebody, I take advantage of of the time.
Yeah.
Like or the 2 or 3 hours, depending on what time zone. It's daylight savings time or whatnot. Because
Yeah.
from
With
here,
Phoenix, it's different.
it's 2 hours now, and it'll be
Yeah.
3 hours here in a little bit. And what I do is I take advantage of that 2 or 3 hours, and I get a lot of stuff done starting around 4 or 5, especially the summertime because the sun's up so early.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of stuff done, but I'm usually by stay on that same time frame. So at about 8 o'clock, I'm going to bed.
Exactly.
So, but that's how. But if it's going to be a 2-day trip, that's more than likely some type of a business trip for me. So that's how I operate. That's when I get home. It's not a big. I really didn't miss anything.
I find it's like 4 to 5 days is where I kind of,
Yeah,
my body starts
that's hard.
acclimating to the time I'm in, and then when I come back, I'm like,
Yeah, if you go 4 or 5 days, that fourth and fifth day, you just kind of seem to. If I'm not true to it, if I start staying up a little later, that can happen. There's been times where I've been able to be true to it, and I just get up. I'm up at 4 or 5,
yeah,
do all my stuff, and I'm head to bed around 7 or 8. And then there's times where that third day you get to bed at 10, and
yeah.
the next day you're at 10 again, and then you're getting up at 6 and 7. So
When you're traveling so much, are you always in work mode? Meaning, I mean, the analytics that you go through with watching films and everything else between college players and then NFL players and everything else, is that what you're doing on your downtime, or do you just kind of?
well, it depends. If I'm behind on stuff, that's the one of the luxuries. Like I have a system that I could take with me.
Yeah.
And it's just like sitting in my office, and I'll utilize that time. There'll be a lot of time when I'm traveling. So I'm going to speaking, and I have some time. Maybe it's not an area where I can golf, or maybe I just didn't have enough time. I get there at noon, but I got the rest of the day. That's really not enough time to go get to a golf play. I prioritize that. I'll spend a lot of time watching tape and catching up on players that I need to be updated on, or teams especially if the season's going on.
Yeah, that's a busy time. Yeah, I was curious. Why didn't you stick with the rodeoing? I mean, you could have been a professional cowboy.
Rodeo. Yeah. Well, I listen. I actually quit football. I got kicked off and I quit at the same time. So it depends on who you talk to. Because you talk to the coach, he kicked me off. If I talked to me, I quit it. Or retired. I'll put it that way. I didn't quit. I retired. And so I had been working on a ranch. I used to trap gophers as a kid. So my brother and I, my uncle would pick us up, and he had 80 acres. And then he was surrounded by thousands of acres by farmers and ranchers. And a big issue in the West is gophers from an irrigation aspect, because they flood irrigate, and those gophers take those holes, divert the water, and cattle step in them and break their legs. So the less gophers, the better off ranchers and farmers like. So we would trap gophers, and you did that by riding horses. You carry about 40 traps with you. You have to have 2 traps per hole, so you can attack about 20 gophers in the morning and 20 at night.
Wow.
You bat around, depends. Sometimes you bat 50%, 10%. Sometimes you get 70%. But we cut the tails off. Then we ride our horses down to the local market, put them in a little glass jar, and they'd give us $1 a tail. So that's how. That's how I got. That was one of my first jobs, and that's what got me into riding horses. And then I did a lot of roundups, and we always cut cattle and branded cattle, and I calf roped, and I worked on bull riding. And that one year when I quit, I bought a trailer. Was having my boss that I worked for on this farm, who was a great calf roper. He was a great calf roper. He started teaching me how to calf rope, and I was going to bull ride and calf rope, the combination and team rope. And one day I was out there. My horse wasn't playing. I was having a bad day. I was having a bad day. And I tried to throw this calf, and I just couldn't throw the calf. I could not throw the calf. I was chasing the calf around. And it just hit me. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I can actually calf rope and rodeo forever. I mean, I can, but I can't play football forever. And so I shut everything down. I sold my trailer. I sold my horse and went back to football.
That's crazy.
And I never got back to rodeo. And my brother's is a good calf roper. He team roped for a long time, but they, back in the West, just where there's a lot of rodeos, calf roping and team roping's big.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
It's big. You can do a lot of stuff with that. You can do that for a long time.
Yeah, they have the masters rodeos that they'll do at South Point in Vegas, and that's 50 and over. So
Yeah.
I have a buddy he was a pro bull rider, and he's like he's now a trainer. He's like, come on out to Colorado. I'm like, I'm not getting on a bull. I'm in my mid-50s. I don't need to get on a bull. I'm done.
I would strongly suggest you don't do that.
No.
That
I don't even
is
like getting on the mechanical ones.
Yeah, if you've ever, those are the fury and power.
Yeah,
is real. It is real. When they come out of the gate, it is like there's a reason they only give you 8 seconds.
Well, yeah, I just interviewed a world champ bull fighter. He's the guy that just attracts the bull away from the guy that just got bucked off. I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that either.
Yeah, that's that. And they're very well respected in the arena of rodeos.
Oh, yeah.
Because those guys are athletes. They do, and they save lives and make a lot of damage too.
Yeah. He's getting off his worst injury. A bull stepped on his leg, shattered
on his what?
His leg.
Oh, jeez.
And
that's a 1,000-pound animal. I mean, those bulls are just
yeah,
and rightfully so.
Exactly.
You can't blame the bull. I don't blame the bull. Yeah, I don't blame them all.
Do you think you'll always? I mean, you're in Kentucky, from Idaho.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be here. Not in a million years. But
should have played for the Bengals.
We're trying to get closer. Year. What's that?
You should have played for the Bengals that last year. It would have been an easy commute.
Yeah, that would have been a truly easy commute. Trust me, I get down to when Marvin Lewis was the head coach here. So Marvin Lewis was, I knew Marvin Lewis in college. He was our linebacker coach. He played Idaho State. And I came up there as a freshman. He was a GA. He was getting into coaching. So I've known Marvin for a long time. He was our linebacker coach in Pittsburgh. And so he's the head coach here for like 15 years. And so I would go down and see him a lot and visit with him. It takes me 5 minutes to get his office from here.
Yeah.
Even though I live on the side of Kentucky, I get down there in 5 minutes. That's how close I am. Yeah, just cross the river, man. So most people think Louisville and Lexington when you say that, and I'm like, nah, it's actually an hour and a half that way down south, Louisville and Lexington. I'm just cross the river from Cincinnati. It's a nice area.
My daughter's northeast of Knoxville, so when I say Tennessee, I think Nashville, but I'm like, no, Morristown.
Is she in Chattanooga area?
Morristown. She's north.
Morristown. Oh, north. Okay.
Yeah.
So my brother's moving to Chattanooga. He's lived in Idaho and Idaho Falls his whole life. Now he's moving to Chattanooga.
I've been to both. I opened up the boot barn in Ammon, Idaho, and then I opened up the boot barn in Chattanooga.
Both wow.
places. So
you got a good feel for both.
Chattanooga's growing, so he'll be good down there.
Yeah, he showed me his area. He might be getting out of some winters that he's tired of.
Yeah. That's I got friends that they cattle ranch up Montana and even in Idaho and Mackay, Idaho, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
I'll visit you in the summertime.
Oh yeah, it's a great time to visit. Now I'll tell you this: the winter's not that bad if you know how to navigate a sled or you like to ski. Then really the winter time. Because I had a cabin up in Island Park, Idaho, for like 20 years. In the wintertime was one of the funnest times because we could snowmobile. I could leave my cabin. I could go right over all the water that was part of the Snake River that was dammed up, and it was like a 3-mile lake. And you could we'd snowmobile. Actually, this would be a trip. We'd leave, go into West Yellowstone, eat lunch. After we got done with West Yellowstone, we had to head down to Jackson Hole, eat dinner, and then snowmobile home. And then we do that in the summertime only with our Harleys.
Oh, that's a good ride though.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's a really good ride. I remember that at Twin Falls, we opened up the boot barn in Twin Falls, and going to see where Evel Knievel, the dirt.
Oh yeah, the jump,
still there.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was an epic fail.
Well, he did it.
He tried it though. He didn't try it.
I wouldn't have gotten in the rocket.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, as long as you have a parachute. Well, getting in there with a parachute, there's a little better better odds than getting in there without one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, if I remember right, because that's been a long time ago, I thought that was the debate, if he was going to have a parachute or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank God
If I
he did.
remember right, that may not, that might be completely false, and that was never a discussion. I don't know why. I was like, I thought, or maybe it was weird. We were wondering if he was going to have a parachute.
Thank God he did, though. I think
Yep, he needed one on that day.
Yeah, he did. I was going to ask you, your kids are older. Mine are 28 and 29 now, but you did a lot of traveling while they were younger. How did you balance? What would you tell people with smaller children? How do you balance the family life?
Well, here's what I did. There's like I had 6 months out of the year that I was gone, say 4 of the 7 days out of the week.
Yeah.
Okay. If you looked at somebody who goes work to 9 to 5 and, all year round.
Yeah.
I was actually, I was on a plane one time and I was calculating. I was like, I think I'm actually home more than that person.
Yeah.
It goes 9 to 5
all the time.
So then it comes down to how much you're truly invested and there with them. You're not just in your office working and you're there, you're with them. And I really, I made a devoted effort to be actively involved. So I coached them in all of their, I was a coach. I was either the head coach or part of the coaching staff in every sporting event that they played in. My daughter eventually moved on into theater, and that was not my strength. I wasn't going to coach or teach that for her, but I was there to all of them and got actually involved in, she ended up going to Broadway and auditioning, and
nice.
I was part of her process, and there with her and actively involved in helping her, and took time with her and invested time in her. I tell people all the time, when you have kids, I go, when's the best time to get involved? I go, the second you lay eyes on them.
Yeah.
The second you lay eyes on them. And I've invested in my kids, and I did that for a reason. I wanted to break a chain and end a cycle, and I wanted to start something different with my kids. And I'm grateful for doing that, and taking ownership of how I was raised versus how I wanted to raise my kids.
Yeah.
I see the rewards in it now. Like I tell my kids, like, listen, I don't care if there's days that I was home when I had to work, and they knew that. But I go, if there's anything you need, you can always come in the office. You can interrupt me anytime. If you need a ride somewhere, let me know. And so what I decided to do, they would do that all the time, which I appreciated. And I decided that when I drove them, maybe it was a 7-minute drive, maybe it's an 8-minute drive because we're just going to some neighborhood house or something. The radio is off, and I got to hold their hand, and we got to talk about something. I did it all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember my son was around 13 years old. These two buddies, Griff and who else was with us? Griff and Andrew was in the back. And I'm just sitting there, and everybody's just talking. And the kid, they're like 12, 13 years old. And my son reached over and just grabbed my hand because he's used to doing that, And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, these two buddies are back. His buddies wouldn't have thought that's abnormal either, because I coached them too. And he knew how I was with Bo and how Bo and I were. They didn't find that odd, because we've been doing it since he was born. And it was just a moment where I was like, okay, that's the value of the day you see it, lay eyes on them, invest in them, be there for them, be with them, listen. I have a parenting tool I use that I developed after reading a book. I added on to it, but it's called A Father's Letter, actually. It's one of the most published pieces of literature next to the Bible, but this father was talking about his day with his son. And it was what he said to him at the end, that I came up with this parenting tool that I judge my kids in the yardsticks of their years and not mine. And that gave me it's always given me two things at all times, still to this day. I still use it because, even though they're 27 and 29, they're doing and experiencing things they've never experienced before. And I can help them with that. But it's given me patience and perspective at all times, And when they're really young, it was really probably the best lesson for me, because when a 5-year-old's doing something, we don't see it as a 5-year-old. We see it as a 35-year-old, and that's what it did for me. It changed my scope. When I saw my kids doing something at 5 or 8, I'm like, really, that's normal for a 7 and 8-year-old, let's not lose my mind over, they're slurping milk or they got their shirt on backwards. It's kind of like, it's kind of the part of growing up. So don't lose my mind about it. And just ask them if they want to wear their shirt backwards. If you want it, that's great, but you might want to. And it's helped me with how I parented them. And later on, I shared that with them, and I asked them to see me in the yardsticks of my years, not theirs. And they took that to heart too. And it created this bridge of communication. And so all the travel that I had, they clearly would, if you were to talk to them, then they knew I was gone a lot. But when I was home, I was with them. I was invested in them.
That's probably the number one thing most business travelers tell me is, when I'm home, and I'm present, I'm involved, because I know I got to be gone for 4 days or 3 days or 5 days or whatever.
Yeah. And I was taking, like, a lot of people, men and women, are gone 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then shoot, that's what, a couple hours
traffic,
the night. If they have activities, that's like, there would be, the 3 days I was home all day. I was home. I got them up ready for school, got breakfast for them. I was there when they came home, so I got to see them. I'd look at the 3 days that I was home. I was like, shoot, I probably see my kids more than somebody sees them that's home all week.
Yeah, because you get home at 6, 7 o'clock at night from work. You want to eat, relax.
Yeah, and you might have some other things, and kids might be gone or something. And so we did the very best with what we had, but I never felt like I was cheating. I mean, that doesn't mean I didn't. There was things I did miss. There was, but very few things I had to miss, or circumstances were just out of my control, and I had to go to work. I had to get. I mean, work.
Yeah.
Work became trumped something, but not many times. Not many times.
Plus, the National Pioneers Rodeo lands the first 2 weeks of December. My daughter's birthday's in that time frame, so I'm at the rodeo. But that's about the only thing. I'm with you. Or they scheduled a sales meeting one time on my daughter's high school graduation, and I was like, not going.
Sure, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, stuff like that. If it was like that, I do the same thing.
No, man. Out of all the cities you've been to, and every place you've been, what's the most influential city you've visited?
That is a good question. Well, ironically, I spent a lot of time. Now, when you say influential, I start thinking about just thing that there's nothing like it. New York. Like I would spend a lot of time through New York. Now, I don't know if that's where you're going or asking. It's just there's so many different areas in New York. And like every 2 blocks seems to be a neighborhood. I mean, and that changes every 2 blocks. And so
going from the Bronx to Brooklyn to Queens.
Yes, and it's just and that whole, and go traveling through there and around there for 20 years. In Chicago, Philadelphia too, because I spent a lot of time there. And even like in Pittsburgh too, where I grew up. Really, I started everything watching the steel mills being shut down.
Yeah, you're right there.
And completely, gone, and that whole city having to transform itself was an incredible watch. And to be a part of that, actually, there's a thing. I don't know if you've ever heard the CHIP program. It's a government-funded insurance program to help families. Okay, that was created in Western Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, when the steel mills were being shut down. And I was part of myself and Carnell Lake were part of the team. Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Their CEO came to the Steelers and talked to Mr. Rooney. And this preacher who had seen the need in the church with their families came together. We created what we call the caring team. And we went to schools to encourage the schools to do a program to raise funds. We called it Kids Helping Kids.
Yeah.
And then the government came in and took it. So the government would never tell you where it came from. And if you ever looked at it, you're like, okay, there's no way the government could run something like this because it's too well thought out. It's
yeah,
and it helps, and it's not a life raft. It wasn't, hey, sit on this and suck on it and don't do anything the rest of your life. It's let's bridge this. Let's do something to help you.
Yeah.
To get to your next chapter. And how can we do that? And that's what the program was established for and has done, and helped millions of families.
Awesome. There's no lead up to that question. I've asked that to a lot of people, and the most influential city, and I've gotten the most random answers that I never expected. Kurt Angle, Pennsylvania guy, most influential was Russia. Meet the people. He goes, I like politics, but the people that I met there, it really changed my perspective. I was like, okay, pretty interesting. Yeah, I love your mantra of find a way. It's your latest book. I want to read Brainwash too. Actually, I played 10 years of football. My wife gives me a hard time about concussions all the time, but find a way.
Well, if she gives you a hard time, just ask her what the leading cause of concussions, leading cause of head trauma is in the entire country. Just ask her that next time. See if she knows the answer. When she doesn't, because she's going to use a sport, or she'll probably point to football right away. Tell it's tripping and falling, and then tell her the most dangerous environment that's probably going to happen. You guys will probably be standing in it, your home. So sports are not the leading cause of head trauma. Okay, in fact, you can take all the sports and times it by 2, and it doesn't trump tripping and falling. It doesn't trump car accidents. It doesn't trump objects. And that's what's the misfortune about this narrative, is that people talk about, if you're going to have a concussion, you're going to get a brain disease. No scientific evidence of that. There's no scientific evidence of that at all. And if people want to argue and say there is, then just have them pull out the literature and read it. And I've done that before. I've had that argument before with journalists. And here's what's disturbing. The journalist actually pulled out a Sports Illustrated article. So they don't even know what a scientific journal is. That's troubling. And they're sharing information that people like your wife are listening to, and that's where they're getting their information. And it's not a knock on her. It's easier to fool people than convince them they've been fooled. Okay, so when they hear something on the radio, when people ask me that or something, I go, how do you know that? There's always I saw it or heard it. Okay, yeah. Where? Well, okay, you may have saw it or heard it there. Have you read the scientific literature? Because at the end of the day, this isn't like what I believe. I'm telling you what the science says. So forget what I'm saying. I'm just telling you what the science says, what the actual evidence tells you. If you go read it, what it tells you. And what's the problem about head trauma is that parents go, oh, I'm not going to let my kids play contact sports, but they're outside in the backyard riding a bike without a helmet.
Yeah.
Wheeled sports are the leading cause of death and major head trauma until our kids can put keys in a car. And guess what? They're not going to stop them. Nobody's campaigning against that, but we're going to try to stop contact sports when there's no evidence of that, of any cognitive issues later in life. In fact, there's more scientific literature that would claim band members and theater people have more issues cognitively later in life. Wisconsin did a paper on it to replicate and duplicate what Boston University said. You didn't see that on the evening news.
No.
You didn't hear the bands being shut down. So it's disturbing from that. What Boston University is doing and has done is deplorable and harmful to people. And at the end of the day, they're missing the most important aspect of their narrative, the science to back it. They have done actually what you should never do in science that is criminal and destructive. They have created a hypothesis, and now they try to make their science match that hypothesis. And history will show you that's corrupt science. That's not bad. That's not science being bad. It's people being bad. and abusing science and misusing science. Because if you follow science right and you do science right, it does give us incredible answers. The problem is it just takes a long time, and you have to look at all kinds of things
All the
to
different
ever
variables.
come up. Really the steps of science is, okay, you start a research, you replicate and duplicate that. If replication and duplication keep saying, oh yeah, we're gaining traction, the next step is now we've got to go controls. Okay, we can't look at sports anymore. We got to go look at the general public. Is there something out there? By the way, the CTE pattern of CTE, 1/3 of the people in the medical journal never played a sport, never had a concussion. Nobody knows that, right? Okay, well, that actually pull right there eliminates sports. How did these people get it without ever playing a sport or getting a concussion? You could argue it's leading them more towards something else is responsible for this versus a concussion or a sport. Then you got to do more and more controls.
Yeah.
And then you have to collaborate. And that's of all of these steps, massive steps, keep leading you down this trail. Well, there's nothing that's even started them down the trail. Even their own science hasn't even started it. They've lied about what their science says. If you ask them to read it, see in the court of law, which there's been several court cases they've just got absolutely destroyed in it. They've tried, that the NCAA has destroyed them on. You could go look them up because they can't prove it. They don't have the two things you need. They don't have the truth and evidence of the truth.
Yeah.
Then they're done. In the court of law, they're done, but they're in the court of public opinion right now, unfortunately.
Super curious. Oh, God, I could talk to you about that because the worst concussion I ever had was snowboarding. And
sure. And you probably didn't have a helmet on?
I don't think so. I literally don't remember snowboarding that day. And this was 1991. So, I mean, we didn't have good equipment back then anyway. I woke up the next day and like they had to tell me, oh, yeah, you open up your Christmas presents and yeah, your brother-in-law.
You don't remember any of it? Yeah.
Like, he's like, yeah, you came down, you had a whole bunch of snow in your head. I'm like, really? Okay. Yeah, I took you to the hospital. Like, because I woke up and I had the band around my wrist. I'm like, what's this from? But
I've been there. I've been there.
Definitely got smashed a few times in football, but I had two daughters, so they played lacrosse, but different sport.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's still head trauma in
everything.
In
gymnastics. My daughter got.
Listen, some of the worst. Gymnastics. Well, gymnastics, absolutely. Sure. Cheerleading. When I coached, I was talking about how I coached all my son in all his sports. I'm telling you, I had the most severe cases where you're just like, oh, was in basketball. You got these kids, they start playing basketball 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Everybody's seen it. Everybody's dribbling the ball like this. You got one guy dribbling it and you got 9 people following the guy, and you got people running into each other, colliding, falling. And when you hit your head on a hardwood floor, you don't have a helmet. I'm telling you, I just like, it's disturbing what they have said about contact sports. In fact, they have such a level of ignorance that if you just use some common sense, you'll be like, these guys don't make sense. Because what do they tell you? You shouldn't play contact sports until you're age 14. Now, did anybody ever ask why 14?
Yeah.
Why 14?
Not 13.
And they're talking about, all these, subconcussive hits when you're constantly banging. Okay, first of all, subconcussion is science fiction. And I could give you the literature to explain the literature that's been done on subconcussion, poorly defined, misleading, and no way to measure. Why there's no way to measure. If you don't have a threshold to measure against something, you're guesswork. Yeah. It is guesswork. It is all guesswork. Well, it's interesting. There's a couple of things that now you start thinking about. Okay, so why would you want to start playing? As soon as I heard Boston University goes, don't start playing until you're 14. My first thought was, well, 2 thoughts.
Wow.
First of all, nobody knows anything about youth sports, and they don't know about the human body, which they can tell you nobody knows about the human body in Boston University, and they clearly don't know anything about the brain. So I was thinking, gosh, the brain must be fully developed at age 14, and that is when we're most protective. Well, when is the brain fully developed? Age 25.
Yeah.
So age 14, something magically happens that obviously they forgot about, that I would witness in the 25 years that I coached football, especially ages 12, 13, and 14. Everybody does it, and it magically happens, and it's going to. You go through puberty. You go from 105 to 165. Now, when you do become 7 to 11, there's just not enough energy and force. Kids are just not big enough, and their helmets are as good as the NFL helmets.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't mean a concussion couldn't happen. More likely that would happen if somebody fell and fell and hit their head or hit on them on the chin. So I'm not saying it can't happen. Now, about 10 years of coaching that 7 to 11 category, I never saw one, never had one. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen. But when we got to puberty, age 13 to age 14, where now the players are bigger. Now you can't, force is better. I had a couple kids that had concussion. Now what I did, I removed them from the environment. They didn't go back. They didn't play the next week. That was the standard. In fact, I established the first protocol in youth sports in 2003. It's the exact same protocol I took to Congress in 2011 and challenged them to put into all sports.
All sports.
And they wanted, because they were like, oh, it just happens it happens everywhere. Okay. So let's go back to the thing that most common sense thing that people need to understand. And then this is confirmation. Those people in Boston University, they don't even understand how the body evolves, how the brain is put together. They don't even know the development of it if they're saying it's okay to age 14. Age 14 to age 19, some of the most critical development is being done in our brain on the right side, the amygdala area. And from 14 to 19, it's those emotions like anger. So the part of our brain with emotions, that's being developed during 14 to 19. So that development is not important. The force and the energy is much, much more severe then. Yeah. That's not important. That's not going to affect you long term. And then let's just say that these contact sports, there was an effect cognitively later in life. They knew that. They had the science to prove it. They wouldn't even need the science to prove it. If you can't, hockey's a part of this deal too. So we'll just include Canada in this, because all of my searchers, I went up into Canada. I talked to neurologists up there to get the full scoop of the two sports that are being attacked the most, which is hockey and football. And I know soccer's being thrown in here, and let's throw that in there too. So 100 years, people have been playing with no protocol. Equipment is paper mache to what we have today. Instruction was terrible. Yeah. You and I and hundreds of millions of people played in that archaic environment through all of those eras. If it were true, you would have specialized hospitals for those people who played contact sports in their life and now have cognitive developments and impairments later in life. And that's where you go. You can't take one person in football that they did this to my good friend Mike Webster, who died of heart failure, and they did a movie on him claiming that football and contact sports created this disease, and he died of that. No, he didn't. He died of heart failure, had a stent in his heart, and he had poor health. He had mental health on both sides of his family. His brain was a normal aging 55-year-old brain. And what they did, they are like vultures at Boston University to prey on that family in a most vulnerable time through the grieving process, and then claim all of these things to do, leave a nasty narrative that is a 100% lie to scare people. But then that comes back to that, it's easier to fool people than convince them they've been fooled.
That's the Junior Seau too, right? I mean, that was...
Junior Seau tried to commit suicide how many times? Junior Seau had just lost millions of dollars in Vegas. He just got his restaurant shut down. He'd had his entire life was in disarray.
Right.
And guess what? Junior Seau is not the only person where this has happened to. You and I could talk about my neighbors here that this same scenario happened to them. They're not on the evening news. Why? They didn't play in the National Football League. They're not a Hall of Famer. I can't scare you with them. That means nothing to you. This happens to our military every dang day. Yeah. And what do we do for them? Are we helping them? No. And that's the travesty. We should be sharing messages of hope and help, because treatment and care that is available today, not just for the physical side of trauma, but the emotional side of trauma, is incredible. And it's not medication. Medication should be our last step. It's all of the ways we can go about repairing and helping young. I don't care what your age is either. that there's resources and there's great treatment and there's great care for people. Let's not promote that. Let's not talk about that. Let's not help people empower themselves. Let's go. Let's spread doom and gloom and a pill.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate, and what you have to do is you have to shut that out and do other research. You have to look, widen your scope and look at different ways. Ask questions, use your common sense, use your gut to sit there and go, and be skeptical. And people might go, well, I'll be skeptical of you, Merril. Please do. I want you to. I want you to go read the scientific literature. I would beg you to do that, because then you're going to know for a fact. And I know people who read it and they're like, I still believe it. Oh, okay. But at least you read it. At least you know all of the evidence, and that's what you chose. But you owe that to yourself. And if as a parent's going to rob their kid of an opportunity where they could build resiliency and have an experience that could transform and help them in life, I think, you gotta look at all of the aspects and make sure you have all that information before you say no, or you pull them out,
What do you, God, I totally off subject. What do you think of the concussion protocol? I coached high school lacrosse with my daughters, and we had to do the concussion protocol test and all that stuff and online and,
Well, listen, our biggest issue still today, it happened to me in 1994. It happened to Tua Tagovailoa from Miami last year. It's about care. Now, there's a lot of things in umbrella care. Okay, you just shared a couple things about care. Your daughters, your kids took these tests, these baseline tests, okay, prior to their sporting event starting. Okay. Well, if you don't go back and use that tool, or if that tool is outdated, so let's say let's use Impact. Like, Impact was the first tool in the history of the world to be implemented in sports, and I was part of the first group of players to ever do that in 1991 with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
That test is probably still considered number one, and it is the most outdated tool in medicine. You're going to tell me something that just went from paper and pencil to a computer and hasn't evolved at all.
Right.
Some 38 years later, is still, the test reliability is still of where it is, and nothing's evolved. There's so many tools superior to that. So there's twofold here. You got to make sure you got a tool that's very good and the test reliability is outstanding. Then the people have to know how to administer it and use it when it, or if it does happen. Those things have to be put into place. And then the care and the treatment that is available, which are many options, need to be implemented and followed properly. But that's when the tool becomes vital. If you use Impact, that test reliability is done up to 5 days. On average, I say it, because as soon as I say on average, when I say the next word, everybody's going to go, oh, it doesn't take that long. On average, most head trauma in sports takes 11 days to return. That doesn't mean all, on average. So it could be
some short, some are longer.
It could be right, and it could be 14, 20, what so on and so forth, so on average. So if you don't have the right tool to evaluate you 11 days out, 20 days out, 30 days out, 60 days out, your tool is irrelevant. Your tool is outdated. You are now liable. So there's just so much under that, but it sounds complicated because most people don't understand it. So I'm a part of I was actually working on an app to make sure we had the best app and tool to evaluate head trauma. And I was asking people, I always start off with our meeting that we're all going to get exposed for our integrity. I'd rather get exposed for having it than not having it. Sure. And that's why I need your honest input and your commitment here. And I'm going to give you mine. Well, I found out there was a tool better than mine. And it would take me years and millions of dollars to get to where they are. And their cognitive testing ability goes almost a year. And it doesn't even need a baseline. It's best with a baseline, but it can be used without a baseline. And its test reliability goes months and months out. And they have a stability component, which is the other way you have to, like, the brain's responsible for everything. Yeah. So how could you just use one test and think that you're going to evaluate the entire brain? You can't do that. So then you have this stability component that's all put together on a phone. Like, you can use this phone and I could do my cognitive test, my stability test in about 10 minutes, as long as I have baselines there for comparison.
Yeah. Exactly.
So for some comparisons. So having good tools and updated tools are vital. Then that person needs to understand or orchestrate them and use them and apply them. And then they're done properly. That done properly, and then you get the right treatment and right program. And usually it's a cognitive program and a physical program because they work in unison for repair. Our kids are going to return as safe as in the history of sports. Their return to play will be at the safest they've ever had in done properly. It's when we fail to execute these tools and we return them to play too soon and they're not properly recovered or healed properly that they run in risk. Done properly and made fully repaired, they return back with no greater risk than before.
Right. Right. I mean, when we were kids, it was, you got your bell rung, get back in there.
Right. Now listen, I get people say that all the time. I go, listen, that's what we knew back then. That's like the Pilgrims being angry because there's not planes, trains, and automobiles. I mean, they did a heck of a job with a wagon and some cattle. Okay, that's all they had. So we gotta and players get angry at that. I was like, well, let's not get angry because listen, through my journey, the Chicago Bears, what happened to me was archaic. I got cleared over the phone in 1994, over the phone. After a Monday night game, I don't know who I am or where I am for some 12 hours. The two signs of severity are cognitive recall and stability. If somebody doesn't know who they are or where they are some 12 hours later, that is severe. That is about as severe as you can have head trauma-wise in an activity of sport without bleeding or something like that taking place, which I did not have. And I had lost consciousness with another misconception of severity. Those two things are severity. Okay, I get cleared 5 days later over the phone. Okay, that's archaic. Even in 1994, and the Bears just had no protocol. The Steelers hired the first neurologist on a team full-time, Dr. Joe Maroon, who him and Dr. Level created the first cognitive test, Impact, that I'm sharing with you that I was a part of the players. Bears had none of that. They didn't even have a neurologist on staff or on call. None of those guys looked at me. I get cleared and I play under these conditions where, what do we not want? Our kids to go back without being recovered. I was not recovered. I was playing with symptoms. I had headaches, and people might be thinking, why did you say something? I didn't know. Nobody told me. Okay. I had no idea these were symptoms and severe and the dangers, You can't have the information today and go back. I did. I wish I did. But I went into cardiac arrest on 5 weeks later. I took a similar blow in the weight room. I went to cardiac arrest. I laid in intensive care for days. I had to learn how to read again. I had major depression I had to work through, and that was an arduous process of a couple of years. So I know the fallout about care and where we slip in care, and it's still about care. We try to reduce head trauma best we can, but you're not going to do that. Yeah, are we going to stop tripping and falling? No. I did a helmet safety campaign around 1990 because two incidents had happened back to back at Allegheny General Hospital. Two kids had just taken their training wheels off. They're just starting their next steps of riding a bike. They hadn't even got to the pedal. They lost their balance, tip over. Both of them ironically hit their head on a curb. One was killed immediately. The other one had major brain damage that would affect them the rest of their life. It was the doctors that were there and saw these two incidents, and they're like, gosh, if they just had a helmet on, nobody's dead. Nobody has major brain trauma. We got a cracked helmet, maybe a concussion, but nobody's dead. That started the helmet safety campaign. Nobody said, oh, you know what? Why are we letting kids ride bikes until they're athletically grown up? They're mature enough to get on a bike and ride a bike. Nobody said that. So why in the world are you saying, oh, we can't play football or stop playing football?
When they're padded.
Show me the scientific evidence to back.
Now they're even putting the pads on the outsides of the helmets during
and that's just a little that's going to backfire. That's going to backfire. But you try to do the very best you can, but here's the problem. So if you say it does a really good job, why don't you play with them? That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you practice and not play with them? It just, I don't know of no value with them If they are valuable, then why aren't you playing with them? And there's no way a player is going to play with that helm, with that on his head. Ain't going to play it. It looks bad. And people might go, well, who cares? I mean, the NFLPA plays a big role in what the players will not wear it. Ain't going to wear it. Ain't going to happen.
I
The
still have my
NFLPA
helmet from
shuts down more things.
1978.
Yeah, I have a couple of mine around here.
And the hard press compression foam. That's all we had.
Yeah, well, you had foam. We had straps.
Yeah.
You got the upgrade one.
You think? Well, hey man, what's find a way about? I mean, that's the new book.
Well, yeah, these words have helped me live a dream and fight to live.
Yeah.
And as you know, I think everybody is at some point, everybody probably says those words at some point, you know, and it usually comes down to, you know, you have deadlines, you have challenges, you have dreams, you have goals, and there's always that sense of uncertainty, like, yeah, I don't know how to do it, you know, and it's just like, well, I got to find a way, you know, and that to me, that first time these words popped in my head, I was 12 years old, and those words inspired action. It inspired me to do something about my circumstance. I didn't know what I was going to do, didn't even know how I was going to do it. And it was after I'd put a goal up on my wall in my bedroom on a corked wall that I was going to play in the National Football League. And these words popped in my head because I started thinking, like, gosh, dang, you got people telling you how hard it is, the odds, don't put all your eggs in a basket, son, or it's impossible. And I'm like, well, I can find a way to do that. You know, and it sent me on a journey. They still sit on my wall. They inspire action. And then I've garnered so much success from those words in experiences like sitting in a chemotherapy chair and battling cancer. I just mentioned laying in intensive care, having to learn how to read, going through depression. I learned a lot about success there, and these words were instrumental. Going through open heart surgery, learned a lot about it. At ESPN, I learned a lot about it. The NFL, I learned a lot about it. My speaking platform, I learned a lot about it from people. I'm a product of a lot of people, and people challenge me and inspire me. And the message at the end of the day is not about me. It is about you. It's about what's possible for you. And that people, sometimes I think people misrecognize what they really are in control of. They are in charge. They're in charge of how you think. Yeah. You're in charge of your goals. You're in charge of your habits. You're in charge of your patterns. That's powerful. You can do amazing things when you take charge of that and control of that. And it all starts here. You know, do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? And if we can learn to control this, they work for us, magical things happen. At the end of when I speak, I always talk about the greatest personal gift we could all give ourselves is that you're done with something, a goal, a dream, a challenge, a deadline, and you open yourself up in a moment of self-reflection and you ask yourself, you know, did I do my part? If you can say yes to that, have peace with that.
Yeah.
I think the greatest personal gift we can give ourselves is to get everything out of our God-given abilities. And wherever that takes us, I don't care where it is, you're excellent. You are the very best because you got everything out of you. And you have peace, happiness, and joy with that. Now that's success.
Yeah.
When you can have those three things accompany your emotions that you're feeling on a journey. And no matter what it is, it's a challenge, a goal, a deadline, whatever it may be.
Lost luggage, missed flight, canceled flight.
Well, let me tell you this: there's been many find-a-ways in the airport for me. I got 7 minutes. Who cares if my bags make it?
Yeah. Man,
you start prioritizing. I want my bags before you're landing, and then you get landing, like, okay, forget the bags.
Exactly.
I get them later.
Find a way. So, a really good example of why you're such a good public speaker. You know, what do you have coming up, and what would you want people to follow you? What's the best way for people to follow what you have coming up?
Well, I really, I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. That's what I really drive from a speaking perspective. And I do a lot of stuff with, a mental health perspective because, listen, just the everyday aspect of our lives is about our overall health. It's just not about physical health. I mean, whatever we're going to pour into ourselves physically is going to go right here mentally. It's a part. These things are together. And so, the better lifestyle that you can create, the more positive things that you can be around, the more you can open one's mind to different ways, to different things, to look at things, different challenges, we grow that way. That's how I've evolved and grown. People have challenged me. I find hope in people. And I've been in those moments where you're like, I don't know how to do that. And then you're like, wait a minute, what's wrong with trying that? And then you try and you're like, thank the Lord I tried it, or good thing. And you know what? Sometimes it is, now I know. Doesn't work for me. Or you know what? I learned something I never would have. So that's a big one. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and those things, but
you got your website too.
Yeah, I got merrillhoge.com. It has all of the resources there too. If anybody's interested, and can reach out to me anytime if you need anything, and we try to help people and give back as much as we can. It's not a one-way street.
Yeah, I tell you, telling both my daughters as they're growing up, and you tell your kids you can do whatever you want when you grow up, and if you want to find a way, make it happen, make it work. And then when I started the podcast idea, I was like, I don't know anything about recording. And all of a sudden it was like my brain, I'm like, hold on, I'm telling my kids their whole life that they can do something if they just put their mind to it. And now I'm not doing it myself.
So what did you do? You took action. That's your mind controlled you for a second, and then you're like, no, wait a minute, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about. People like, if I get done talking and they're talking about me, I did a bad job. But if they're thinking about themselves, and they're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I am in charge. You know what? There is more in there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get it. And they have that new energy and that new plan. Something that can be tangible and applicable. And then you've hit a home run.
There you go. Well, I'll make sure I put all the links on my website so they can.
Yes, please do, and let us know how we can help promote you as well when you get ready to send that out, and we'll be happy to do it.
I appreciate it. So enjoy your time, and
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great meeting you.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks,
all right, brother.
All right, buddy.
Take care, buddy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.